This is my ultimate Sorare team building guide for Sorare 26. The 25-26 season is set to be the biggest season ever on Sorare, with more ways to win really than ever before, and so many more tangible routes to go for players of all budgets to really start winning cash on a regular basis, as well as getting their hands on other in-game items, as well as real world things like tickets, shirts, money can't buy experiences, and everything else that they're going to throw at us this year. Now, if you're brand new to Sorare and you've not yet opened up your account, there's a link that's in the description in this video and in the pinned comment that will get you €150 of market credit. This will come to you in whatever your native currency is, dollars, pounds, euros, whatever. The way you activate this credit is by clicking on the link directly below and signing up straight away so they know you came from this channel. Sorare love the content here at Quinny 3001, and that link is the best link around for opening up your account and getting started. So by clicking on that link, you give yourself the best chance possible. But once you've opened up your account, your first purchase up to a maximum of €150 will be directly matched into the amount of market credits you get. So you go out and you buy your star player. We'll talk about doing that in the video today, of course, and then with the credits you can disperse that across as many purchases to the maximum value of 50% as you would like to. So you can really go and fill out your whole squad. By doing so, you support me and all the content here at the channel, so I'm very, very thankful if you do so. If you do get stuck, if you've got any questions, jump into the comment section and I'll come and sort you out. But I always link my beginner tutorials, my new to Sorare series in the description of all the videos. So if you're after a tutorial kind of walkthrough stuff, this video will be great for that as well, don't get me wrong. But anything that's not in this video will be in that playlist for you. But yeah, let's just get stuck straight into this, because as you probably know already, Sorare is 5-a-side fantasy football. Now there is 7-a-side fantasy football that's been released this year, and that is for all of the cards that are from any season of the game in any year gone by. That game mode is called Classic and it's forever available. The only thing you can really win and pull out of that game mode is in-game items like cards and essence. Essence is like pieces of cards, and if you get enough of them, they turn into cards, that sort of thing. For anyone looking to play to win money in the game, you need to be buying cards from the current season, or in season as we call it. And the point of recording, we're coming into the 25-26 campaign. What Sorare always do is release their cards as early access. And this year's design is little kind of SD microchip type things, and when they get all the pictures in from all the clubs that are licensed in the game, because Sorare's an official partner with all the major leagues and clubs that you see in the game, and it sincerely basically is everyone in world football. So once they officially get the pictures in, the cards are all approved from marketing and all that sort of thing. So normally towards when you see like other football games kind of come out, essentially we then get this lovely reveal ceremony where the pictures like this turn into the actual cards themselves. So these are the cards that you need. Now you need 4 of these in your 5-a-side fantasy football team, and your other player can be from any season. It really doesn't matter, and it doesn't matter what kit they're wearing either. If you've got a player that's like an Enzo Fernandez, for example, he could be wearing a River Plate kit, a Benfica kit, it doesn't matter. He plays for Chelsea, so he's eligible for every competition that Chelsea's in. Now the 2 primary game modes everyone's going to be playing in is either going to be limited or rare, and that is basically the colour of the card. Limiteds, every player on the game will get 1,000 of these at a maximum per season, and for a rare they'll get 100 of them maximum per player per season. Rares are slightly more expensive, they generally pay out a little bit more as well, and compared from one to the other, rare has got less teams in it. For the reasons of example in the video today, we'll be looking at limiteds because they're the entry level cards, the most affordable ones, and again, just for all intents and purposes of the video, we'll be looking at the Premier League. Now 5-a-side, 7-a-side fantasy football, everything we talk about in the video today is applicable to really both of them, no matter what angle of approach you're going through today. But no matter what you're going to be playing, SO5 or SO7, you're going to need a goalkeeper. The goalkeeper position is one of the pain points of Sorare, and it's just because of real world football. Every team only has one goalkeeper, where they might have 5 defenders, they could have 3 strikers, etc, etc. So it's one of those points where, one of those positions where there's not too much room for manoeuvre, but there's some clear do's and don'ts and things to be aware of when we're looking for them. If you're to go onto the Sorare website itself and hit the scout page, you have a lovely scouting suite here, I think I would describe it, where you can see a number of the main metrics and statistics that are captured on the Opta scoring matrix that Sorare runs with, and you can choose what stats are available and really kind of highlight exactly what sort of player it is you're looking for based on some of their underlying numbers that directly impact the game. Now with goalkeepers, the primary school of thought for most people is you get a good goalkeeper at a good team. They don't concede many goals, they should keep their fair whack of clean sheets, and for the most part that is probably one of the most popular strategies that is around. I've got Alisson Becker on screen here, and Alisson is clearly Premier League champion goalkeeper at the moment, Brazil #1, one of the best goalkeepers of the 21st century. I think a lot of people would agree. And as you can see here, this is his scores over the last kind of the end of the Premier League season, and then a little bit of international football in the summer there for Brazil. Now, if he gets if he gets a clean sheet, he's just guaranteed a flat 60. Okay. Now, the thing I want you to notice here with Alisson, because he's on a dominant team, because he's on Liverpool, Brazil, they control the ball a lot. He doesn't actually face that many shots, and if he doesn't face that many shots and doesn't get his clean sheet, you just need to look at this 5-1 victory for Liverpool. He's only brought in 40 out of a possible 100 points, and it's really down to inactivity rather than being bad or whatever, compared to this 52-point score where they actually lost 3-1 to Liverpool. So you actually want goalkeepers to have a good level of activity. Do they actually get a clean sheet? Yes, fantastic. That can make a big difference, because as you can see, if they have a busy match, look at this clean sheet against Manchester City, but he's been very, very busy as well in goals. He's made 5 saves from inside the box for 10 points. He's made 5 saves for 10 points, 2 saves from inside the box for 4. A good high claim. You can see all the goalkeeping statistics that are being captured here, as well as his passing stats, because we know Alisson loves a bit of passing, doesn't he? And you know that's a very high value game, isn't it? He's earned the clean sheet there, and he gets an 80-point score for it. And again, these games he's probably not actually even played that bad. This is Aston Villa, a 2-2 draw. He's just not been that active, has he? He's made 1 save in the game here, and it's a 2-2 draw. Yeah, he's conceded 2. The last matches we looked at, he conceded 1 and 3, but this is actually the worst score out of the lot of them, and the time he scored 2 is actually, kind of the highest in a weird way, which is interesting, isn't it? So goalkeepers can be quite volatile, and even if you do go for the top of the food chain, they don't really guarantee you too much. I'm much more of a fan of getting the player that's, not necessarily a relegation candidate, because in that case they will be conceding too many goals, but certainly those plucky teams that maybe have like 8 good players in their team, but the rest of the squad's a bit net and they have peaks and troughs throughout the season, that sort of thing. And a great example of that is probably Jordan Pickford. Now, Jordan Pickford is actually really good on Sorare. It actually pains me to say I'm not a big Jordan Pickford fan, but when he gets a clean sheet, it's always super high value. It's not just that base minimum score of 60 points or whatever. It generally does lead him into the 70s and above. Not always, of course, but he is a goalkeeper that's also capable of the odd assist. Now, we do see assists crop up from goalkeepers now a lot more frequently than we used to. It's not very frequent at all, but he does get rewarded for that as well. But he's capable of that. He's also capable of saving a penalty, which is just as good as a goal. He's actually got himself here a last man tackle against Man United in a 4-0 loss, so that actually kind of saved the day for him there. But because he's at Everton, he's facing a lot of shots, and this is a guy that's actually like a good goalkeeper. If we look at this 1-0 loss away to Fulham, he's actually brought in 65 points with making 7 saves, 5 from within the box. And you know how goalkeepers play, this could have all happened, a good body of that anyway, within a 5-second period, so it's just, you need your goalkeepers to be active is kind of my point here. Accurate sweeper keeper, he loves a bit of that as well. They're worth some good points. And then again, he's kind of coming out from the back, isn't he, and sweeping up behind the defence. So the Jordan Pickford on this point maybe isn't the best example, because he is good on Sorare. Sorare scouts and managers are Jordan Pickford fans. So he's priced like he's an Alisson or something. Well, not quite, but he's not under the radar, is he? But they're the 2 directions you can go down with the goalkeepers when you're building your squad. Do you go for the big team that should just get enough clean sheets to make it all worthwhile, but if they don't get that clean sheet, you're pretty dead in the water? Or are you going for that more Jordan Pickford kind of type player where they bring the clean sheet in, they don't just bring in that 60, but they do a lot better, and sometimes they don't even need that clean sheet to come in. They can get something spawning like a last man tackle, save a penalty, which is quite cool for a keeper, or maybe an assist or whatever, as well as having lots of saves clocked in the match to just make the score a lot better. And as I say, I'm a big fan of getting those guys that are less fancied, but are not as bad as everyone makes them out to be. Generally, they're a good price. Jordan Pickford, for context, is £16. Alisson is 23. And it's early doors yet, but my shout for the player I would probably pick up in the Premier League this season is probably going to be Kelleher at Brentford, in that Jordan Pickford kind of mindset. Now, defence is a bit murky, right? Because there's so many different shades of a defender. You've got dominating centre backs, you've got ball playing centre backs, you've got wing backs, you've got full backs, you've got a tight back four, you've got a back three, you've got a back five. There's defender cards that aren't actually defenders in real life. They may be playing midfield on the wing, maybe even up front. So defence is one of the murkiest positions that there is on Sorare, and it's one that I actually think you get a lot of good value, a lot of good points per pound in, because like I mentioned with goalkeepers, the problem with them is that there's only one goalkeeper in the team. With defenders, actually, you get kind of lots of them in squads, and then you're talking about how often they play, who's first choice, etc. The tried and tested safest method in the game is getting the big ball dominant centre backs at the teams that are going to be in amongst the top end of the league. Virgil van Dijk is a great poster child example of that. Van Dijk's also capable of snapping in a goal, whether it be a header from a corner or a shot or whatever it might be. Defenders of all shades, however, are eligible to be getting, or everyone's eligible of course, but susceptible, let's say, to picking up a negative decisive like an error led to goal, or conceding a penalty, a red card, that sort of thing. So those kind of details, what type of defender are they? Do you trust them to be cool, calm and collected and to not make mistakes, is also something to be factoring in. But centre-backs, as you can see here with Van Dijk, yeah, he does bring in a 40 out of 100, a 46 out of 100 sometimes, but very rarely does he let you down, will he kill any of your lineups, is probably the expression to use. And he still has the ability to make a lineup. He can hit a big score, 86 points out of 100 here. It is against Ipswich at home, but there's no clean sheet. He didn't score a goal. That's a really dominant performance. He is pretty close to the top of the food chain. I was a big Josko Guardiola fan. He's kind of a bit different, isn't he? Plays a bit of left back, plays a little bit of left centre back. When he is left centre back, he kind of roams around the pitch and whatever, but he hits hundreds. Guardiola was very, very good, very top of the food chain, and he is one of these kind of unicorn players defender wise, where he gets points from all over the place. This is for Croatia, so I don't know why I clicked on that, but he gets tons of points in defending, possession, I beg your pardon, passing and attacking. He's one of those kind of all-arounders. He does literally everything. So if he does get an assist or a defensive thing here, like a clearance off the line, then he's absolutely laughing, he's absolutely flying. But very similar, like I mentioned earlier, there is ways to kind of get that around that a bit cheaper. The other thing I'll say in terms of the different shades or whatever we're kind of looking at is also the fullback position. Now, Trent Alexander-Arnold isn't actually on screen anymore, but he kind of was the cheat code, and it probably doesn't surprise you if you've been anywhere near any sort of fantasy football space in recent years. He's playing balls into the box, he's taking set pieces, he's an attacking-based winger, and yeah, Anthony Robinson was like the cheap man's Trent Alexander-Arnold last season. Now, he did have the ability, like you can see here, with negative decisives. This game against Chelsea is quite interesting. A clearance off the line and an error led to goal. Very active player. You want players that are active, is probably something that's a bit understated in the game. Yeah, he is. And again, this is the thing with fullbacks, because they're always playing balls into the box and they're getting into the opposition's final third and whatever, they can actually lose possession quite a lot, and it can just take so many points off their score. In this game here, they've won 2-1 against Nottingham Forest, but he's lost 10 points on crosses and clearances that just haven't connected to another Fulham player. So fullbacks more than centre-backs will do this to you. Centre-backs, as you'll know from watching football, just play simple passes very often, so pass completion, possession loss, these things are much more in your favour. But with these players, they can really hit. In this game here, they've drawn 2 each, but that's not mattered because possession loss has been 12, so it's not quite as bad as what we've seen on the last one. But he's got the success is flipped, so he's not only losing 18 possession loss down to 12, the negative element of that 6 difference, but those 6 turning into positives means he's got 2 attempted assists. He's got 3 final third passes successful. He's got 6 balls into the box in total, so it might even just be that simple, that straight. And then ultimately players have converted and gave him assists as well, which really elevates his score. But fullbacks, like you can see with Anthony Robinson here, Jedi as he likes to be called, can hit those higher scores that centre-backs don't always deliver. I'm just clicking on Colwell because he's on page. I assume he'll make my point for me quite easily, although with Chelsea, players are always in and out. But he has one big score there, but look at Colwell for the most part. He does struggle to score anything above 70, and that's not because he's bad or anything like that. He really needs a decisive action to happen in the match. But he's just a good defender, gets on the ball, doesn't really do anything too incredible. England against Ireland, he's done a bit differently, whatever. But that's my point. Fullback is a bit more risk-reward, and centre-back is generally a lot more stable. Now, with SO5, you need 1 defender. You might play 2. We'll come to that shortly. But it depends on your appetite. Are you a risky person? You want someone like Anthony Robinson who could deliver a 90? or do you want to get someone maybe like the Colwell that won't do below 55? I am a bit of a roll of the dice type player, and there's a few new signings into the Premier League. I think Maxime de Kuiper, who does this for Belgium and for Bruges in the Belgian league, big step up, big question mark if he can do it or not. But this guy is mad attacking from fullback, and Brighton facilitate players like this. It's not too big of a stretch of the imagination to think he could score somewhat similarly to what we've seen here. Maybe isn't quite as 100 capable as he was at Bruges and whatever, fine. But I like Maxime de Kuiper. That's the sort of player I would be building in my squad, because if you are going to finish in the top positions, you need top scorers. Now I can hear he's already saying, yeah, but what about that streak thing, Quinny, where you just hit a set points target and they pay you out a certain amount of money, and every week you do it, the points get higher and the payout gets bigger. What about that? And yeah, those players like centre backs are probably better to facilitate those kind of steady, predictable scores, and then you maybe look elsewhere, like midfield, to try and get you some more power onto your into your score and onto the leaderboard. I can get behind that. Of course, it really depends on what you're going for, but the streaks aren't exclusive to the leaderboard. You can hit the streaks and finish high in the leaderboard all at the same time. It's an extra layer of competition. It's on the game. It's not a different mode altogether that you need to enter at the cost of another one. But midfield for me is the position on Sorare fantasy football that I pay the most attention to, because like I mentioned with Guardiola, who was that kind of like Rolls Royce does everything, midfielders, that's what I'm looking for. And midfielders, it's more feasible, and maybe there's more of them to find that go back to their own box and defend, and go up to the other end of the pitch and contribute towards attacks, some of them more successfully than others. Bruno Guimaraes is a great example of one that's maybe, and I know he's not conservative, I know he's not a defensive midfielder, but he's not like a full-on attacking based midfielder. And for those kind of guys that aren't, they don't always have the final third presence like a Bruno Guimaraes, these guys are maybe a little bit underwhelming at times, is the way to put it. But they are, as long as they do have that final third presence, but if they are a defence-centric player, then there's very many matches where they can come out with a really good score. Because like defenders, they get points for tackles, they get points for interceptions, duels won, the ratio of that as well, coupled with those other statistics, can unlock things like double-doubles to triple-triples, which is just extra scoring potential. So those midfielders that are like box-to-box guys, but maybe they're more defensively leaning, they can be safer to play in the bigger matches when you know they're going to need to be battling in midfield, and then you're crossing your fingers that they have a memorable match, they have a match-winning performance. And Bruno Guimaraes is a player I like a lot in the game and in real life, and yeah, he's not always perfect, it can be frustrating, but that sort of player is maybe the one that springs to mind when I say you want them to be doing a bit of everything, and I just thought I'd show him as a pretty good example of that. And one of the things about the midfield, the way the points are scored on Sorare for all the different actions for defending and attacking, is it gives this game, there's so many more players in this game that have viability in your lineup. Moses Caicedo, N'Golo Kante, this profile of player is always shelved as redundant in every other fantasy game that I've ever came across, certainly anyway. But Moses Caicedo, because he's so hyperactive, he actually does so much in the game, all over the pitch, both sides of the ball. He's a very valuable and very solid sort of midfielder you can build a team. I don't want to say around, because I think you should build teams around players that's, yes, he can score those bigger points if he does get, what's this here, a penalty assist. So he's won a penalty against Tottenham for 85 points. This one here against Liverpool is a last man tackle. So if he does do something, that doesn't need to be a goal or an assist, but if he's, like he can do, he's got goals and assists in his locker, then he can really spike really hard. But I think like someone who can do this with a bit more frequency is the sort of midfielder you build your team around. I'm very excited for Florian Wirtz coming into Liverpool, because I think the scoring potential he's got from what he had at Leverkusen will translate very well into the Premier League, and he is like an unadulterated all-out attacking midfielder with high success rate. And again, these midfielder cards are a lot more fun to back. I think of Bernardo Silva in this guys as well, because Florian Wirtz, Bernardo Silva, these are both guys that do things off the ball as well. Bernardo Silva wins tackles, he wins possession. Yeah, he's got 25 possession lost here, a bit of an off day in that regard, but he's actually got a huge passing volume away to Fulham, which has just resulted in all these points kind of accumulating for them. So those attacking midfielders that are like hard-working guys are not like that old stereotypical and lazy player. I don't really think there's many of them left in the Premier League nowadays anyway, but they're the sort of midfielder that I generally gravitate towards. I want guys that are really final third present, but do have that kind of dirty side to the game, rather than the designated number 8 like the Bruno, or the deeper 6 like the Caicedo. I'm much more of a fan of the attacking, hard-working guy. And there's lots of great examples of midfielders in the Premier League. Bruno Fernandes is a great example of the prototype, the hallmark of midfielders that most people look for. And that's the guy that is kind of like I described earlier, but also takes set pieces and is also on penalties, because they just rein in decisive actions on a much more regular basis. And when you've got that kind of base of productivity in the final third and are handy enough, I know he's not the most defensive player in the world, Bruno, but he still does win the ball back once in a while and whatever. They are just cheat codes when they get to that ultimate level. And Bruno Fernandes, there's maybe one or two other ones that are close to that level in the league, but he is almost a league apart when it comes to the fantasy football element. Now, it actually took me a bit of a while to find the last example of a midfielder for you to consider, and I'll kind of let you know my thoughts on it. But it's those wide midfielders, wingers as we probably call them. And this can be really funny how some of these guys are attributed as either a forward or a midfielder. Midfielders are more central overall, but you do get some of those wide players that do creep in. And one of the ones that does creep in is Jacob Murphy, Ballon d'Or. Now, this guy last year went on an absolute heater, and this maybe shows you the best side of it and the worst side if we look at this guy's scoring history. He also obviously had a great season last year, and, hats off to him. But I think we kind of know, his limits in the game, as it were, in real life and whatever. But as you can see here, even with all these decisive actions, he's only got into the 80 score once. And the problem with these wider midfielders is that they just aren't involved in the game enough, because they're on one side of the pitch or they're wide. Yeah, some of them do really track back and help defend. Jacob Murphy is a bit of an engine out there, I think we would all agree. But as you can see here, just the way it generally pans out for wide players, they just don't get involved in enough stuff throughout the game. Mohamed Kudus is another example of this. He just went to Tottenham. He might be a little bit more like this kind of situation that we see here, where one decisive action you could get into the 70s quite clearly, but so many of them are just a bit more like this, kind of screen here that you see, where most of the time they're losing possession, they're running up and down the pitch, they're kind of getting, they're not having a great time of it. Maybe they can get a decisive action to just lock in that 60 score and kind of get out of jail with it a little bit, but if they don't, the likelihood of them scoring something halfway acceptable, 51, 54, is less likely than it being a 33 or a 38 or something like that. So they're the midfielders that you really need to be careful with and, really just watch out with. But I'm a football fan that likes goals. I like to see people win matches. I like to see headlines written. And generally, my favourite formation is to play with two midfielders in SO5, and I like to get guys that are on set pieces. I like to get guys that are capable of goals and assists and everything, but if they do need to defend for a bit, they will be there and they will be in amongst it. That's the sort of profile of midfielder I always like, and similar to what I said with defenders, I'm looking for those guys that can get the bigger scores. With one decisive, they've already got enough points in the locker already, enough points locked in the match, where one decisive brings in 83 points or something incredible like that. Obviously that's not happening all the time, but that's the sort of profile I really enjoy playing and have a lot of success with. So 5-a-side fantasy football, we've got our goalkeeper, defender, midfielder. We now need a forward, and there's a little bit of this that carries over from midfield, because a lot of the forwards we have are wingers, are wide-based players. We also have those centre forwards, as you know, and there is even some of those attacking midfielder number 10s that sometimes get categorised into the forward camp itself. But the forward one is very similar to the goalkeeper in regards to there's less of them. Midfielders and defenders there is an abundance of, and you can really find all sorts of different people at different price points that really do a lot of the stuff that we've highlighted and spoke about that are really effective in the game and the sort of profile you should look for. Centre forwards aren't aplenty, even in real world football, never mind in the game, and wingers can be, again, similar to fullbacks, maybe a little bit flaky in the game. Now on screen there's actually a lot of new faces coming into the Premier League, and at point of recording, Luis Diaz is probably on his way to Bayern imminently. Ryan Cherky is probably my favourite example of these wide players that are very good at dribbling. He is, in my opinion, very close to the top of the food chain in terms of how he plays and the pass creation he's got. He's very, very final third present, and for attackers, you really want them to be in the final third and on the ball. And this is a guy that gets the ball from deep and takes it to the final third. He beats guys on the way, and then when he gets to the final third, he does something. He passes it to someone else, which makes a big chance. He takes a shot, gets a shot on target. And this is a guy that really, with one decisive very regularly, one goal, one assist, can score incredibly well, can get more than one decisive very feasibly. And he's moved to Man City, so time will tell. He's done alright in the Club World Cup for the small sample size that is, but he's the sort of the apex of the winger, Mo Salah is probably the actual example to look at here. But Mo Salah, after he signed that contract and the league was won, maybe Liverpool kind of half phoned it in or whatever. But again, Salah maybe does show you the negative side of those wide forward, those wingers quite clearly there. Can absolutely smash, can win the game, can go on an absolute heater of a run, be the man. Look at this. Last year he was just phenomenal, wasn't he? For huge spells. But there's always that wee 36 or that wee 41 that might sneak in with the guys if they just don't get on the ball enough, if they just don't get as many shots away, etc. So again, my type of forward, maybe a bit of a spoiler. So you've got wingers, you've got attackers, you've also got guys like Cole Palmer, who, like, really, what position is he? I think we would all agree the majority of his time has been spent in the number 10 role. He's been listed as a forward. He actually does have old Man City cards that are midfielders. So tactically, if you wanted to play Palmer in midfield, you could do that with a classic card, a one from an older season, like we mentioned in the intro. But Cole Palmer is like a guy that, see when he's been on form, that attacking midfielder that can actually get some defensive stats in for the forward position. Not that they really mount for anything, but he's on set pieces, he's in the final third all the time, he gets bags of decisives. He can be a bit of a machine, Bruno Fernandes kind of esque, because the set piece thing is just such a difference maker at times. Obviously he's world class, he's amazing on top of that. It's not just a set piece machine, there's a lot of open play stuff from him as well. But he's like more of that kind of number 10 position. And then you've got the centre forward, the actual poacher. Erling Haaland is probably the first person everyone sort of thinks of. And similarly to, like I said, with the Bruno Guimaraes, like sometimes these guys, like, they can just get the wrong side of the game. And Haaland, how many scored? Not 100 here, a few 80s, a bunch in the 70s, 198 against Kazakhstan. So that's for Norway. So Norway in Champions League, obviously every other kind of game that he'll play in will be covered for the most part. Very few things that are not covered in this game. But he's kind of hit, if he scores a hat-trick, you're fine, but if he doesn't, you're kind of thinking, what's he going to do for you? And I thought I'd show Chris Wood, because he went on a bit of a heater last year. I don't know what's going on with that picture, by the way. But just to show him as an example, because maybe you're thinking, Haaland was off it last year. And yeah, maybe Chris Wood was actually, if you can get that hold-up striker that can win a few more duels. Haaland doesn't touch the ball very often, as we all know. Similar might happen with Gyökeres, is kind of part of the reason I'm kind of airing this cautionary tale out to you. But yeah, it might be a bit more like an Alexander Isak actually, or maybe Chris Wood can score a little bit better, a bit more regular, a bit more consistent. But yeah, mild spoiler from earlier, I'm much more of an attacking winger type guy when it comes to a forward. I want a guy that can really push the score up high. I want a guy that the team wants to put the ball on, wants to put on the ball. And Mbeumo going to Man United could be a good example of like a hard working forward. Like, again, I'm a big fan of Quinny. He profiles like this as well, where one decisive, you're getting into the 70s more often than not, and that's a good kind of forward player to go with as well. Those guys normally aren't that expensive. Bryan Mbeumo at the moment is $5.99 for a classic version for an older season card. Cole Palmer's $33 as an example. Now, we've got our goalkeeper, defender, midfielder and forward. It's 5-a-side. We can pick one more player, and that's of any position of the three we've just went through. And this is really a mixture of strategy and taste. Do you go for two defenders and maybe play for the team that's going to get the clean sheet, dominate the ball? Maybe it's one centre-back, one full-back, so you kind of have a wee bit of both worlds going on. Maybe go double fullback, double centre back, and in midfield, I'm a double midfield guy because that's just kind of I just like it personally. I like the chances of success coming from midfielders a little bit more than defenders and forwards to some extent, depends on who we're talking about. But for the most part, I'm a double midfield guy, and yeah, I'm looking for ball players. I'm looking for guys that dictate the tempo, get on the ball all over the pitch, and can score the goal, can make the assist and all the rest of it. Or do you go double forward? Have you got a power attack stack? Have you got two forwards that are set to kill at the game week, and like some of the ones we've looked at today, always bring the fire, always bring the heat when the match, when the goals rain down and they do go and win the match? It's really down a personal preference thing, what you do with your extra spot to fill out the 5-a-side. But the 7-a-side, you have to pick two defenders, you have to pick two midfielders, but you only need one forward, the one goalkeeper of course, and position number 7 is the extra, so you can go triple defence or triple midfield or double forward. And again, that's kind of down to personal preference, and it's just a wider version of what's available in the SO5. But once you've picked your team, the last thing you need to do is pick your captain. Now, like I mentioned at the top of the video, you need 4 in-season cards to compete for money when you're playing Sorare, and you get one guy you can buy from any season gone by. Now, it does not matter what player you look at, the in-season version of them is always going to be more expensive than the classic version, the older versions of them that are in the game. And whatever classic card you're going to be looking for, it really should be the best player you can get that you cannot afford to buy their in-season version of. And with the market credits you'll have, so With the promotion right now, you spend $150 and you get that matched as market credit. You should get a really good in-season card with that, of course, because the only way to do that is by buying from Instant Buy or from auctions. And then with that remaining £150 credit, you fill out the rest of the squad with all the squad that we've just spoken about, what positions you like, what players, whatever. And as you're doing that, you're going to see the kind of strength of the market, how much different players cost, that sort of thing. And the one player you really want but you cannot afford, that's the player you look to the classic market for, where you buy from another manager, you cannot use your credits for that, and you bring them into the squad. That'll probably then dictate if you're going double defence, midfield or forward or whatever it might be. But 9 times out of 10, they're probably going to be your captain, because they should genuinely be the best player that you can get your hands on into your squad. I hope you've enjoyed this one, guys. On screen now is some other stuff that I've made that YouTube thinks you might enjoy. If you did enjoy the video, please do hit the like button. It really does mean a lot. If you jump into the comment section, let me know thoughts, feelings, takeaways, anything you would add into the conversation for anyone looking for a guide on how to build their team. And if you are brand new, of course, and you've not signed up yet, please do use all the links on the channel and in the video. It really does mean a lot. And of course, you've always got me here for some help and support in the comment section if you get stuck or whatever. Stay out of trouble, have fun. I'll see you on the next one.